Hello, everyone. This is Kashish Shah, tuning in from Mumbai, India. Today, I'm going to talk about green ammonia in India. And in my opinion, it's a low-hanging fruit in India's green hydrogen economy. So I want to begin with some my thoughts on broadly on the green hydrogen economy. And then later on, I want to move on to the specific discussion on green ammonia. So many would agree that green hydrogen, the value chain and the ecosystem for this multi-utility fuel is very similar to oil and gas, where you have the upstream, midstream, and downstream. In upstream, there are production side of things where electrolyzers are becoming cost effective, and their costs have actually reduced over the last decade, but it needs to further go down in order to meet cost parity with other forms of energy and fossil fuels, such as gas and coal. In the midstream side of things, how do you actually transport the green hydrogen? Do you use pipelines? Do you use ships? In India's case, India doesn't have a substantial infrastructure of gas pipeline. And there are huge doubts, even if the gas pipeline infrastructure existed, like in the case of Europe, would that be viable? Would that be technically viable? And I think there are huge doubts in terms of, investments actually required to retrofit these gas pipelines to transport green hydrogen. And then on the downstream side of things, how do you sort of link the upstream and downstream? Do you co-locate these green hydrogen manufacturing plants with the actual industries where green hydrogen will be of potential use? And there are various use cases in terms of transportation, refineries, electricity, so on and so forth. So without any further ado, I want to start with my favorite chart. A lot of the energy wonks tuning into this presentation, they would have seen this chart, and it is called as the green hydrogen ladder, where it is mapping the cost viability and technical viability of a lot of the green hydrogen use cases and how effective green hydrogen will be in these industries. So at the bottom of the ladder, you have use cases which are not currently viable, and possibly the difficulty level is much higher in terms of making green hydrogen viable for these use cases. So green hydrogen not only needs to reduce the cost, but the cost of production also needs to go down. It needs to compete with its fossil fuel counterparts, gas and oil, gas and coal. It also, maybe in electricity sector, it needs to compete with other forms of electricity production and also energy storage, such as battery energy storage or pumped hydro storage. In transportation, it competes with electric vehicles, which are increasingly becoming viable in a lot of the economies all over the globe. So as you can see, the top use case of this green hydrogen ladder is fertilizers, where ammonia is sort of the main ingredient of these fertilizers, and green hydrogen to produce green ammonia could become instantly viable in this use case. So let's begin with the fertilizer industry of India. So in India, the fertilizer demand has been strong over the last decade. More than 50 million tons of chemical fertilizers were used annually on average. And now it is expected the fertilizer demand would more than double by 2050. Natural gas is used to produce ammonia, which is the main intermediary for providing nitrogen in all nitrogen containing fertilizers. Urea is the main nitrogenous fertilizer in India, constituting about 55 to 60% of total fertilizer demand. So in the fertilizer sector, and India being dependent on agriculture, heavily dependent on the agricultural economy, there is a huge burden on government to fund subsidies for fertilizers. So India's union budget for fiscal year 2022-23 pegged the fertilizer sector subsidy at rupees 1 trillion. And this has been third year in a row where the subsidies have gone about rupees 1 trillion, which roughly turns out to be about US $14 billion. The subsidy budget accounts for a direct relief through regulated subsidy pricing for fertilizers and favorable gas pricing. So when we talk about gas pricing, all the urea units are connected to a national grid that ensures supply of gas at a uniform price by pooling prices of domestic gas and imported LNG. Currently, urea is sold at heavily subsidized price of rupees 5.6 per kg against the actual international benchmark price of around rupees 60 per kg. So this is a massive 90% subsidy, and this all comes out of the government pocket. And on the right hand side, you can see the chart of the historic spot prices of the Asian LNG price markers, and these prices are also will continue to remain high, and that sort of increases with the subsidy burden on government as the use of fertilizer continue to increase in India. So in this case, the huge subsidy burden on the government of India, green hydrogen to green ammonia becomes a very viable option. So in terms of green hydrogen, as I said, India is also latching on to the buzz that is around green hydrogen, and there are a lot of developments across India in terms of corporate announcements. In terms of production of cost, that is sort of the first touchstone in the green hydrogen economy to be successful. The cost of green hydrogen need to come down to US $2 per kg. That's the magical number where it becomes competitive with hydrogen produced from natural gas. Currently, the cost of green hydrogen in India is estimated to be about US $5.5 per kg. Now, Reliance Industries, which is one of the largest industrial house, they have huge ambitions to create a green hydrogen economy in India, and they have an ambition to reduce the green hydrogen production costs to a US dollar per 1 kg in less than 1 decade. NTPC, which is India's largest thermal power plant owner and also owned by the government of India, now they are also transitioning towards renewable energy and clean energy, and they have a target of reducing the production cost to US $2 by 2025. So they're a really ambitious target, and the NTPC target sort of is reflective of the government's objective by NTPC being a government being entity, and this sort of doing a government service and sort of strategizing for government. When we talk about bringing the cost of production down, I think there are two important costs of bringing the green hydrogen production down. Number one is the electrolyzer component, and the other is the input power cost. Now, in this two pie charts, it gives a breakdown of capex cost for two of the prominent green hydrogen electrolyzer technology, alkaline and PEM. So you can see about 56% of this cost is actually the hard cost in terms of the electrolyzer stacks, power supply and electronics, and other balance of plants component. And these costs, the capex requirement for alkaline right now is estimated to be at US 1.4 million per megawatt, and for PEM it's about slightly higher, 1.8 million per megawatt. Other factors that would constitute, the cost of hydrogen, I've already highlighted the two most important components. One is the electrolyzer cost. So if you just consider the modules or the stack of electrolyzer, for alkaline, it is somewhere around US $750 per kilowatt, and this needs to come down to about US $250 per kilowatt. In terms of electricity cost, the electricity input cost it needs to come down to US $20 per megawatt hour. And then the third important factor is actually how do you operate these electrolyzers and the utilization or the load factors of these electrolyzer plants. So on this graph suggests a hydrogen cost depending on the load factors of the electrolyzers. So at very low load factors, the capital recovery becomes really low, and that makes hydrogen expensive on average cost basis. And when you actually move towards high load factors, it means higher requirement of electricity input. So this is this analysis of various modes of production for green hydrogen and the input power modes, from grid electricity to round the clock renewables. If there are storage component added to solar, how will it play out and how will it fare compared to the fossil fuel counterpart, the gas counterpart of a new ammonia production. So as I said, high utilization rates of electrolyzers require a constant supply of power, either through a grid connection or round the clock supply of renewable energy. When you go for a grid connection, and then you actually probably need to buy green certificates to actually to make that green hydrogen, the hydrogen green. And then the other option is to actually co-locate a solar plant, so have a co-location of renewable energy input, which could by 2030 could be at as low as $20 per megawatt hour, which could then allow the production prices to go down as low as $2 per kg. Now the problem the problem with this co-locating with solar is that at best right now the solar utilization factor is about 22%. With technology upgrades and improvement in technology, this can go as high as 28%. So you actually need to oversize your solar power plants, add some storage on both ends of the on the power input side as well, and also in terms of the production of green hydrogen. So you probably require green hydrogen tanks, hydrogen storage tanks, to actually allow the Haber-Bosch process that requires continuous supply of hydrogen to actually convert it into green ammonia. So another model that is coming through all over the world for green ammonia production is an integrated solar to green hydrogen to green ammonia facility. This is sort of a schematic diagram of one of such green hydrogen to green ammonia facility in Spain. So you can see a 100 megawatt solar plant with a 5 megawatt to 20 megawatt hour battery storage that is connected with a 20 megawatt PEM electrolyzer, and then there is also hydrogen storage involved, and then ammonia. The green hydrogen is converted into ammonia through Haber-Bosch process, and then this ammonia on site is used for fertilizer production. Now, I have in this table, I've listed some of the top green hydrogen to green ammonia projects, and Australia is one of the most prominent players in the green hydrogen economy. So one of the projects, the H2 Hydrogen Hub project in Gladstone, Queensland, which has a plant capacity of 3 gigawatt of electrolyzer, which would produce about 1.8 million ton of green ammonia annually. And then there are other examples in Chile and Denmark where green hydrogen economy is sort of has already taken some pace. There is favorable renewable energy prices, and also in terms of government support to actually create these green hydrogen projects. Now, another interesting fact about green ammonia is that it not only is a viable feedstock for fertilizer, but it also becomes a good energy carrier. So that also adds to the value of green hydrogen. According to Wood Mackenzie, more than 85% of export-oriented low-carbon hydrogen projects are actually planning to ship ammonia. Now, some of the favorable characteristics that allows ammonia to be a better energy carrier than green hydrogen is that ammonia has better volumetric energy density, so less space is required to store equivalent energy content of ammonia versus ammonia versus hydrogen. Both can be stored in liquid form. However, hydrogen requires tanks to be maintained at a very low temperature of minus 253 degrees Celsius, whereas ammonia could be stored at minus 33 degrees Celsius. So sophisticated cooling equipment and mitigation hazards make hydrogen more expensive to transport, whereas ammonia is liquid at ambient conditions and requires lower storage volumes. In terms of the readiness or where currently things stand from a government or a policy perspective in India for green hydrogen. So in February this year, India came up with its maiden green hydrogen policy. And the fact that government identifies green ammonia as the top use case for green hydrogen, all the stated incentives in the policy are for green hydrogen as well as green ammonia projects. So some of these incentives, number one is the single window clearance. So, for faster sort of project approval, government's is trying to create a single window platform so that, projects can move faster. In terms of land allotment for green hydrogen production plants, as well as the renewable energy required to power these plants, government will be allocating some space in renewable energy parks. Now in India, renewable energy parks, so solar, ultra mega solar parks have been a huge success. They've been able to bring the renewable energy costs dramatically down. So that is a good model going forward to actually allow renewable energy parks to support production of green hydrogen. Also, in terms of some of the potential of renewable energy in India could be at different zones, typically in Rajasthan, where there are huge barren lands where the solar irradiation is also great. A developer might want to locate its solar plant in these deserts, and then probably through transmission lines, this power could be transported to the actual facility of green hydrogen production, where it's actually co-located with the industrial use of the fuel. So the government has waived off interstate transmission charges if the solar or the wind plant is actually powering green hydrogen production. And there is also a priority access for these transmission networks if they are used for green hydrogen production. There is also a 30-day energy banking policy. And, if in terms of getting an open access route for transmission of green power for green hydrogen production, it would be available in 15 days. So these are some of the stated policy incentives. In terms of other challenges and possible solution for green ammonia, number one is the creation of demand. So all the policies that I talked about, or the policies or incentives that are stated in the green hydrogen policy, they favor the production side of things, but the government of India also needs to create an offtake requirement. So in the second phase of policy, which might come up in next couple of months, there would be green hydrogen consumption obligation for various industries such as refineries or ammonia, so that there is a creation of demand or creation of offtake if the investors actually willing to put money into production plants. In terms of financing, India has a lot to learn from Australia. We've learned that Australian Renewable Energy Agency has been financing a lot of these test or pilot green hydrogen projects, and that is something the Indian Renewable Energy Development Agency, being the green bank of India, could also look to do. Again, in terms of the carbon, the other challenge is carbon requirement. Sorry, I've just made a typo here. It should not be the creation of demand. It should be the requirement of an external carbon source. So when the urea is actually produced from natural gas, the CA2 output is again used for the reformation process, and it's recycled for the urea production. In the green ammonia route, there is no carbon involved. So you actually require a carbon input to actually produce urea from ammonia. And one of the recommendation that Terry has provided is that some of these electrolyzer capacities could be actually deployed at existing natural gas plants for short to medium term, and then the output of CO2 could be the resulting output of CO2 could be sold for industrial usage, for instance, carbonated beverages, and then in future these plants could be actually used to could be switched to use biomass. So just want to wrap up the points that I spoke about, and these are some of my broad thoughts on where things stand in India for green hydrogen. So ammonia is definitely the most viable application for green hydrogen. The projected growth in fertilizer demand in India will further intensify subsidy and import dependence in the sector, unless it is switched to a cleaner and domestically produced feedstock, which is green ammonia. Green ammonia could significantly help the government in reducing these $1 trillion subsidies. So there is a huge incentive for government to actually expedite these process and incentivize green hydrogen or green ammonia production and its use in fertilizer industries. In the long term, it also has the potential to actually reverse the import dependence for the energy needs. Green ammonia, either as a chemical feedstock or even as an energy carrier, is a big avenue for creating export capabilities for India. But to make all of this possible, I think one of the important caveat is that there should be a deep localization of the value chain. Locally manufactured electrolyzers and solar modules will eliminate import dependence and create jobs and investment opportunities and accelerate the energy transition in a wholesome manner and make the use of green ammonia in the best possible way. So thanks a lot for listening to my presentation patiently, and I'm happy to answer if there are any questions.
Thank you, Kashish. That is fantastic. It's really, really good to hear some updates from India and what that landscape looks like. We might go through a few questions quickly. In your report, you mentioned players like Reliance and Acme, who are looking at electrolyzers. Are there any other players that you're keeping an eye on in India?
Yeah. So first of all, I mean, just to follow up on one of the slides from my presentation where I spoke about integrated green hydrogen to green ammonia facility, Acme actually has a fully commissioned green hydrogen to green ammonia facility in Rajasthan, Bikaner. So Acme, and coming back to your question in terms of if there are any other players, most of the prominent renewable energy developers in India are trying to sort of synergize their existing capabilities in renewable energy and then partnering up with other green hydrogen electrolyzers manufacturer such as Ohmium, or they're trying to partner up with tech giants such as Larsen and Toubro. There are a lot of refineries and oil and gas majors in India who already have announced plans for using green hydrogen in their refining processes. So yeah, there are a lot of JVs being announced. One of the prominent ones has been the JV between Renewable, L&T, and Indian Oil Corporation. So these are the three giants of the various industries coming together to actually make green hydrogen work. Another big player is Greenco, who's announced electrolyzer manufacturing facility. Also, a lot of state governments. So Karnataka has now partnered with Acme again to allow for a green hydrogen facility, green hydrogen production in state. So that's sort of trickling down to at state levels as well. And as I said, a lot of the renewable energy players, they are the prominent sort of players again in the green hydrogen economy as well.
It really sounds like that sharing of the burden and the joint venture approach works really well when you can shuttle renewable energy generation from one side of the country to the other. Is that waiving of interstate fees and the banking, is that really the key for the green hydrogen policy?
Yes, I mean, the way, renewable energy potential or the renewable energy resource is in India, it's in a lot of the Western coastal states, and there is also availability of barren lands. So the ideal scenario would be to actually have an integrated facility, as I just highlighted in the case of the green hydrogen, green ammonia. But if that is not possible, because the industrial clusters might be at one place, but renewable energy potential in terms of availability of cheap land would be in other states. So that's what the government's trying to do, waive off. And India has a great sort of integrated transmission network. It's a fully integrated network. So, make use of that network and, sort of provide that incentive to actually allow cheaper renewable energy to power green hydrogen electrolyzers.
It sounds like that is far more advanced than the LNG infrastructure in India, which sounds like it's rather confined to import ports or industrial hubs. So the LNG imports are sort of used on site or fairly close to site.
Yeah, that's what it is. I mean, there is not substantial infrastructure in terms of LNG, and whatever the infrastructure there is, a lot of them are stranded assets. So India hasn't had a very good experience with gas and LNG, and I think that's why green hydrogen becomes the development of green hydrogen in India becomes very important. And also we need to make sure that we don't make the same mistakes that we made with gas, where investing into pipelines, which becomes stranded asset. Rather co-locate these green hydrogen facilities with the use cases, or use the transmission lines to actually power these green hydrogen electrolyzers.
Excellent. So it sounds like there's a lot to look out for. Thinking about the next 6 months or 12 months, are there things that you're keeping an eye on in particular announcements coming from the government?
Yeah, I think the most important one would be the second phase of the green hydrogen policy, which would be out anytime soon. And a lot of the talk around that policy, the second phase of policy, is that it will have incentives around the offtake side as well. Because if there is no clarity in terms of which industries will be using, sort of government needs to provide a bit of handholding with these mandatory use of green hydrogen, which then allows investors or interested parties to actually develop these projects.
Okay. Just a few more questions and then we'll wrap. The urea question. Obtaining green renewable urea is has sort of been termed the holy grail for green ammonia. What are the prospects in India? Are you swapping one problem for another with an over-reliance on a carbon-containing fertilizer? How does that balance strike you?
Yeah, unfortunately, Julian, I'm not a fertilizer expert. I've only studied the ammonia side of things in terms of how ammonia could be. Looking at the $1 trillion subsidy, that sort of made me do this whole analysis. So I think the sort of, I'll try and answer your question. So urea constitute about 55 to 60% of the use, and I don't see that going away, at least in the medium term. So let's say by 2030, I don't see that changing. So rather than having, having a huge sort of wholesome changes on the fertilizer side of things, this is the challenge that government has, is that, okay, urea is the most used fertilizer, and if we have a huge subsidy burden, let's first address this problem, and how can we actually greenify this urea, the fertilizer. So I think that's where the focus is right now.
Excellent. And I think I'll finish with an important question. Is there any view for exports, or is this all a domestic use?
Yes. Government of India has huge ambition to actually export green hydrogen, because renewable energy costs in India is cheaper, and that's all. I mean, with all the whole green hydrogen, not just the green hydrogen economy, but the clean energy economy, there is an ambition to actually export, and that sort of aligns or trickles down from a huge ambition of becoming, a production power hub. There is a huge requirement of creating jobs and bringing investment. So I think that sort of goes hand in hand for the Indian government. So in terms of making that export dream possible, there will be huge investments required on port infrastructure, which is sort of all work in progress. So this, yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Kashish. I certainly encourage everyone in the audience to go out and read your report, Ammonia, Low-Hanging Fruit for the Green Hydrogen Economy. Thank you for the update from Mumbai, and we really look forward to other updates coming out from India. I'm sure there will be a lot more very, very soon. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.